All right. Hello, everyone. Coming up is the FTC Predictions and Preview Show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about 40 of some of the best teams in FTC who will be competing at the Maryland Tech Invitational this weekend. We'll release the match schedule, break down our locks, contenders, and dark horse teams, and talk about some of the matches that we think are going to be really critical for the competition. Before we start, let's get excited and watch our Into the Deep MTI hype video. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Tonight is all about the Maryland Tech Invitational. I'm Abbas, and joining me tonight we have Miriam and Rowan. Tonight it's about the previews and predictions for the upcoming 2025 Into the Deep Maryland Tech Invitational. Please keep in mind that the match schedule we'll be discussing tonight is preliminary. If a team is not able to attend or other factors happen, the match schedule may be reran. Um, the MTI will be streamed right here on Fun's YouTube channel on Saturday and Sunday. And before we jump into the matches, I'd really quickly like to highlight one very important thing. MTI has slightly modified the game rules this year with 5 extra samples of each color and 10 extra neutral samples in the submersible, as well as 30 clips per alliance. I think this is really going to shake up how the game is played and is going to um, be resulting in a lot of different scores. Rowan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think um, one of the main differences between MTI and any normal official first competition is MTI's focus on making sure that the robots are doing the best of their possible abilities and getting the highest possible score and really doing everything that their robot can do. And that's why I think I really like this change of adding more clips because it's testing the limits to see what these teams' robots can do and how high their scores can possibly get.
Yeah, Miriam. I mean, I think the question is, are we going to see a match with all 30 clips scored? What do you think? Or if not, how high are we going to go?
I mean, it's possible. Like MTI is 40 of the best teams, so I would not be at all surprised. If we don't see all 30, I think it's definitely going to come close.
Yeah, awesome. With that, let's break down some key teams and matches at MTI. So, starting out, each of us picked our lock and a match that they're competing in to discuss. Locks are teams that each one of us believes are going to win MTI. And of course, we're not going to be covering every team. So, let us know in the chat who else you're looking for. So, starting off, my lock is going to be Team 24033 Alphatronic from Cluj, Romania. We'll see some clips of them on the screen right now. And they have been absolutely dominant this season with 3 out of the 4 world records, one of the top 3 or 4 OPRs coming into MTI, and just a fantastic 9-1 run in Houston. I think every team that will be competing this weekend has just insanely fast cycles, really good driving, super consistent autos, etc., etc. What sets Alphatronic apart for me, though, is their adaptability, intaking abilities, and hang. So they can super easily switch between specimen and sample. They have 6 to 7 of each in their autos, and they've proven time and time again that they're super reliable on both of these. Another thing is, as far as intaking is concerned, we just talked about those extra samples in the submersible zone. I think Alphatronics intake is especially suited to do really well with these and handle them. I think there'll be some robots that will be bogged down by these extra samples, but Alphatronic, I think, will be especially faster, and that's just going to lead to more points on their end. Finally, they have that level 3 hang just absolutely locked down. And I think, given that they're one of the fastest teams to hang, they can squeeze in even more cycles considering the extra elements. And I think MTI just as a whole plays to a lot of Alphatronic strengths, and that's why I could see them take the whole thing. Talking about their match, we saw that they're going to be competing in qualification 31. Overall, though, they're predicted to go 7-2, which is a worse record than Miriam and Rowan's locks. But one of the matches that they're projected to lose is within 1 point, and that's qualification 31 that we saw up on the screen. So qualification 31 actually has 2 of the highest predicted match scores of the entire qualifications at 478 points from the Red Alliance and 471 points from the Blue Alliance. So all of the teams in this match are just absolute powerhouses. And I want to start with DeSoto Technics, who is Alphatronic's partner for this match. So we'll see some of their videos coming up now. And what really sticks out to me about them is they have a top 10 OPR, number 5 in teleop, just super great all around. I think the biggest thing for me is going to be their specimen auto. If they can hit those 5 samples, that's like the bare minimum. But seeing them push for like 6, or if somehow they had time, maybe 7 for MTI would be just really great. Alphatronic, they're just gonna have to do those sample cycles as much as possible. As far as the Red Alliance goes, I think we're going to have to look at Robo Troopers over here for the basket cycling and Techno Z for the specimen cycling. I mean, it's kind of a match made in heaven for these teams and for this match. Miriam, what do you think? Who do you see like really making a difference?
I mean, this match like you said, it's super close. I think Alphatronic is probably going to end out on top, just because they're super adaptable and have proven consistent. It could go either way.
Yeah, and I think one big thing for me that's interesting, at least about this one, is that Alphatronic and TechnoZ were alliance together at Worlds and Elims, and then DeSoto Technics and Robo Troopers were alliance together at Worlds. So it's really funny that they're playing, both alliances are playing against each other in this match now. And Rowan, as far as Endgame is concerned, both alliances have one like super consistent level 3 hang robot and another that did only level 2 at Worlds. Do you see either of those teams making improvements for MTI, or what do you think we'll see in Endgame?
Yeah, so the question of whether or not to go for level 3 hang has been one of the biggest questions for at least my team from the beginning of the season, because doing level 3 hang, yes, it gets 15 extra points from level 2 hang, but it also takes that much extra time. And I think it's really hard to know whether or not the teams will plan on making improvements, considering that there are all of those extra samples and clips in the submersible and in the observation zone. So I think if the teams figure out that their raw cycles alone are going to outscore doing a level 3 hang, I think they're going to not bother with doing a level 3 hang. But if they decide that they're not going to outscore it, then they're going to go for a level 3 hang.
Yeah. Awesome. Miriam, let's hear about your luck.
So my lock has to be none other than world champion team 11260 Upper Creek Robotics from Longmont, Colorado. So as you can see on screen, we all know them as, the innovative clipbot, and seeing them just keeping scoring and scoring at Worlds, it was an amazing thing to watch. So they have, a consistent 10 specimen auto, and that gives them a strong start to every match, and they never fail to continue to score. The additional samples and clips on the MTI field is just going to increase their scoring potential. And the only thing that I see holding them back is the limited space on the high chamber. So overall, they are predicted to go 8-1, with their only loss being a 10-point difference. So one match that I want to highlight is qualification match 39, where they are on the Red Alliance with Team 23928 Double Quarter Pounders, and they are against Team 7244 Out of the Box and Team 12808 Revamped. So Double Quarter Pounders, they're a solid sample robot, and they'll be able to stay out of Upper Creek's way and score points themselves. And out of the box and Revamped, they are both also strong teams. And this game, it's mainly just about being offensive and better than your opponents. There's not much defense, and I think Upper Creek and Double Quarter Pounders, they just have it. So this match does feature two opponents who might move samples around within the submersible, but with a robot that can score so quickly, and Upper Creek has experienced drivers, it just won't matter much if Upper Creek needs to drive around the submersible to intake samples.
Yeah, I think one thing that I remember always from Out of the Box's Pennsylvania Championship was when they were like passing the alliance colored samples over to their partner for those like final matches and to like really just eke out those last points. Is that something you see them doing with Revamped, Rowan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think doing that strategy of passing over colored samples, if you're cycling samples and if you intake a colored sample and you pass it over to the team who's cycling specimen, um I think that's a really interesting strategy, but it all depends on having practice with that partner to know if it's actually going to be more efficient to pass it over to them or if it's just going to be more efficient to score them in the high basket.
Hmm. Yeah, with that, let's move on to your lock, Rowan.
Yeah, so my lock is going to be the current world record holder, 15972 Technozy from Piteshti Ramoni. Romania, there we go. It's a robot design where you can deposit samples into the observation zone and score without having to turn your robot, is one that many teams have attempted to do this season, but none have been as clearly dominant as TechnoZ, as shown by their third highest OPR in the world. Their speed at cycling samples into the observation zone while scoring specimen makes them one of the most efficient specimen teams in the world. Paired with their cycling speed, they have an astounding 7 specimen autonomous and a level 3 ascent, setting them up to be one of the highest scorers at MTI. And I must say, every single time I see this team compete, I'm just completely blown away by how fast they are and how intense their scores are. They currently have 6 predicted wins, but each of their matches are all still anyone's game. Anything could happen in them. And the match that I would personally like to highlight is qualification match number 70, where they are partnered with 19434 Redstone.exe, and they're facing 18270 Robo players and 19176 Roboti. It's going to be a critical match for the rankings of all 4 of these teams. The current match is predicted to have a 4-point lead for the Blue Alliance. However, it's important to consider whether these teams focus on samples or specimen. For example, Redstone.exe primarily focuses with their sample scoring, and they have a 6-sample autonomous, which will pair greatly with TechnoZ's specimen auto. And we haven't seen much gameplay from Redstone.exe, so I'm really excited to see how they choose to play the game, how they choose to, whether they focus on cycling or they focus on defense against Robo players and Probati. As for their opponents, are both teams that primarily focus on sample scoring in the past from what we've seen. Robo Players has a 7-sample auto, and they have really fast cycling speed in Teleop while having experience from their matches in Worlds playoffs with dealing with defensive driving. So that's something to consider whether or not Redstone.exe decides to play defense against them. And Brabati has an impressive 8-sample auto, and their raw speed is what really astounds me, as showcased in the Romanian Championship. It'll be a really tough match for these teams, and I'm super, super excited to see which alliance will win.
Yeah, Rowan, I personally see Robo players starting with the specimen auto just for auto, and then 19176 switching to teleop for those specimen cycles. Miriam, what do you think?
I agree. I think Robo players, I feel like when I saw them at Worlds, they seemed like a very consistent sample bot for Teleop. So I think they're definitely going to do samples in Teleop. I agree with you that they're probably going to do specimens in auto. It's kind of just a question of, like what will Brobody want to do? Like how hard will it be for the teams to switch? But I think they will. That's probably what they will do.
Yeah, and Rowan, as far as hang is concerned, I think we just saw Burbody have that level 3 hang, and then we know that Robo Players also has a level 3 hang. Do you think it's going to come down to that hanging for these alliances?
That's a very good question. I think something to consider is the speed at which all of the 3 teams who we know have a level 3 hang, the speed at which they can hang. I don't know if a Redstone.exe has a hang or not. And I think them not having, or us not knowing whether they have a level 3 hang or not might slightly affect the outcome of the match, but I still think it's anyone's game.
Cool. Yeah, with that, we're going to go into our contender teams. So for those not familiar, contenders are teams that we feel could have a big impact. And while they didn't quite make the cut to be a lock, we'll break down why they should be considered a contender and like what are some factors that could really swing this team in favor of a very, very deep run at MTI. And of course, we'll be highlighting a key match that this team is playing in. Miriam, let's start with you.
So my contender for MTI 2025 is going to be Team 18270 Robo players, who we just talked about. So they have a very quick and consistent sample bot. And I think MTI will be a great opportunity for them to showcase everything that they can do. So at pretty much any other event, I would consider them to be a lock. But with all of the other top teams present, and you'll notice here, like they are a little jerky on the depositing. So I think that's really what knocks them down. So they'll need to just make sure that, like, to be precise about each placement and they don't miss a single sample. But I think that they can do it. So on the preliminary match schedule, They are predicted to go 8-1. So the match that I want to highlight for them is going to be qualification match 79. They are on the Blue Alliance with Team 22-381 Brainstem, who I also think they are a consistent team. Their opponents are going to be 23-521 DeSoto Technics and 14-903 Sharkbots. So this is actually the one match that Robo Players is expected to lose. But like given the difference, I think that they are capable of scoring higher than their OPR. And then this match almost toward the end of the day, so it really could be key for both alliances in order to claim their captain spot. And I think that it could end up going either way.
Yeah, Rowan, what do you think about, we talked about DeSoto Technics a little bit already, but what about Sharkbots? What do you think about them?
Yeah, so I think I really their intake is something that really sticks out to me, and I think that it's going to be all about the cycling speed for Sharkbots and whether or not their alliance can take the win for the match and how high they can rack up their score.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Miriam, anything you want to add? Like, what did you see from Sharkbots at Worlds? I know they played there, they did decently well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are, they live up to, they are an MTI team. I think so. One concern I have with them is, being partnered with an amazing team with DeSoto Technics. We'll have to see like who does what. But I'm sure that they will figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, so I'm going to talk about my contender now. My contender is Team 14529 Turbo V8 from Pleasanton, California. So they were actually they ended 12th in the Ochoa division at Worlds, and they went 3-1-2, 3 wins, 1 tie, and 2 losses in Worlds elims. And so they had they had some really good matches there. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think they have one of, if not the best. One of, if not the best intakes in Into the Deep. I mean, it's just lights out, just so quick. And I think it's going to be very, very advantageous for them at MTI, just for all the reasons we've said, with those extra samples and all these factors. And so one thing that I think is really important is their 7 sample auto as well. And I think this is going to be really critical for qualification rankings. They've also shown time and time again that they can be very strategic with their intaking. I think this is going to be useful, especially for the highly competitive matches that they're going to be playing, because they can go over to their opponent's side of the submersible, mess them up a lot, but barely impact their own cycle times. And I think that's going to be really huge. Now, talking about their match schedule a little bit, they're currently projected to go 5-4, which is not a great record for a contender, but they have a couple key matches. They have one against Alphatronic, another against TechnoZ, and a third against Robo Players, and even some others with other teams we're going to talk about tonight. So just with every single one of these matches, they could really shake up rankings and show how Turbo V8 will be for elims and how they could be like a really strong elims team. So the match I want to cover tonight is qualification 48. And so this is going to have Turbo V8 and Peppers against Robo Players and Ultraviolet. So currently, the Blue Alliance is actually projected to lose by a landslide, which is kind of crazy to me, because I think both of these teams are very, very strong. And so I'll put the Peppers video up on screen here. And we can just watch their MTI submission. So they were one of those teams that did not qualify for the Houston World Championship, but they did really well at Romania, and they submitted a 318 non-penalty submission for MTI. So that's just a little bit higher compared to their 153 OPR, right? And I think that's really going to swing the match schedule in favor of that Peppers and Turbo V8 alliance. As far as the opponents go, we have Ultraviolet and Robo Players. So Robo Players and Ultraviolet just don't have as strong of an auto as Turbo and Peppers. I see if Turbos and Pepper both hit their 7 sample and 7 specimen autos, I think it'll be just like pretty much match over for the other lines. Rowan and Miriam, anything you guys want to add?
So I think if you can't tell, I really love intakes. I think your comment on their intake being really fast and being able to reach across the submersible without slowing down their intake speed is going to be a massive swing for Turbo V8. I think playing offensively with your intake in the submersible is a key component that, if you do right, it can really slow down the other teams while making sure that your cycles are not slowed. And I think that's going to be a really big benefit for them in this match.
Yeah, Miriam, anything you want to say about like Peppers? You know, we haven't seen them compete for a while, but historically they've always been a really strong team at MTI. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Peppers, they're always strong. I don't want to comment too much on their current robot because who knows like what improvements they've made. I am sure it's going to be great. I mean, year after year they come back. They were at MTI last year, I believe, or if not the year before. They've definitely they've earned their spot there. They were one of those teams where I was sad to not see them at Worlds, so I am glad that they will be getting an opportunity to come to the U.S.
For sure. Yeah, I think in general this qualification is going to be like a huge upset. So I can't wait to see what happens in just a few days. Rowan, let's hear about your contender.
Yeah, so my contender for MTI is going to be 15167 Robotroopers from Herndon, Virginia. Uh, Only one word comes to my mind when I think of Robotroopers cycling speed, and that word is wow. I got to see them compete live at the Chesapeake Championship, and I was completely blown away at the impressive rate that this robot delivers samples into the basket. They have a 6 sample autonomous and can average up to 20 samples scored per match in teleop. Um, they also have one key skill, which I believe will lead them to be really dominant at MTI, and that is going to be their driver coordination and driver skill. I believe somewhere in this clip you can see them playing heavy offense against the other team in the match, and they play it really well, really smooth, and their drivers are so coordinated and so calm. And I think that that driver coordination and driver practice is really going to make them be completely dominant at MTI. So Robotroopers is currently predicted to go undefeated in their qualification matches, but as always, it's entirely up to their driving and gameplay to decide who will win those matches. The key match I would like to bring up is match number 65, where they are paired up with 7129 Robo Raiders and are facing off against 19862 Mecha Mantises and 23928 Double Quarter Pounders. So Robo Raiders will be a tough partner for Robo Troopers, considering that they're both generally sample-focused teams. Although Robo Raiders might pull out their specimen autonomous. Um, and I think one thing that sticks out to me about Robo Raiders is their intake speed and how instantly they go into the submersible and collect those samples, which I believe will be really useful for when they're partnering with Robo Troopers, so that they spend minimal time in the submersible, because you also saw how fast Robo Troopers intake those samples from the submersible too. Their opponents, Mecha Mantises, focus on scoring specimen in teleop. They have an incredibly innovative turret system, which I think which allows them to cycle specimen without having the need to rotate the robot, which I think will pair really, really, really well with Double Quarter Pounders, who focuses on sample cycling in the teleop period. And Double Quarter Pounders has a really small intake, which just goes right in the submersible and immediately gets a sample and comes out, which again, I think is going to be a key component of this match, which is none of the robots are going to spend too much time in the submersible. None of them are going to be playing too defensively or offensively with their intakes. And I think that's something very heavy to consider for this match. And so
Yeah,
if
I'm,
both
I'm
can be very
also
touched. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm also really excited to see Mecha Mantis's turret in person. You know, I've been wanting to take a look at it for a while this season. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it goes against Robo Troopers. Totally agree. All right, jumping into our dark horses. So our last category of teams to highlight are our dark horse teams. while MTI is the all-star event of FTC, dark horse teams are ones at MTI that are flying under the radar a bit. Maybe they had a big rebuild, or others just don't believe they'll make playoffs. But each of us picked a team that we really believe you guys should all be paying attention to, and we're going to talk about why, talk about their matches as usual. So, Rowan, who is your dark horse, and what key match do you want to discuss?
So my dark horse is going to be 19044 Peppers from Iași, Romania. They have an impressive 7 specimen autonomous and some of the fastest sample cycling speed I've ever seen. And I think what sticks to me most about this team is how fast they are at both specimen and sample cycling, which makes them a really versatile partner for anyone. As you can see in this clip, they have really fast sample cycling as well as their impressive autonomous. I put them as my dark horse because of their intense match schedule. They're currently only predicted to have 2 match wins, but again, all of these matches are anyone's game. The predicted win or our predictions are just that, predictions, not what's going to happen. And I think they're going to do really well with their versatility. So the match I want to highlight is number 83, where they're paired with 21836 Itcon IR against 7172 Technical Difficulties and 506 Pandera. So Itcan IR stands out to me as an impressive sample cycler. They can pair really well with Peppers to get a 6 to 7 sample and 7 specimen autonomous, giving them a strong lead as the teams enter teleop. Another thing I noticed about Itcon IR is their larger intake, which gives them a lot of chances to play offensively in the submersible, which, as I previously mentioned, is one of my favorite strategies this season, is to mess up the opponent's intaking. The opposing alliance might have a harder time coordinating because of what we've seen. Both teams do prefer to score specimen. Technical Difficulties has a robot kind of similar to Techno-Z that lets them score specimen and cycle samples into the observation zone at the same time, which I believe will give them a lot of opportunities to increase their cycling speed. And their partners, Pandera, also focused on specimen. They have a 5 specimen autonomous, and they also have a design that's optimized for depositing their samples out the back into the observation zone. And I think one key thing about both of these teams is the differing strategies. Technical Difficulties, they cycle samples into the observation zone and score specimen at the same time, and Pandera just stockpiles all of their specimen in the observation zone and then scores them all at the end of the match for one rapid burst in scoring. So this match is going to be really, really close, and I am personally super excited to see how these teams will have proved since their last competitions and how Peppers will face against their really tough match lineup.
Yeah, Miriam, Rowan mentioned how like Pandora has a strategy of storing the samples and then scoring them all at the end. Is this something you see working out at MTI? Do you think teams will have to change this up a lot? What are your thoughts?
So I actually think that in many matches that is going to be a strategy, like especially for the specimen teams. It's like if you're able to store them in the observation zone, especially if your robot it has trouble in taking from anywhere in the submersible, because the samples are going to get pushed around. There is no coming back from that, and even like less so. But if you are a sample team, if like depending on where your slowest point in cycle times is, it might be helpful to put them in the net zone and something, and that way you can claim all your yellow samples and then just score them rapidly at the end. That one's a little more iffy because it depends on your robot design, but overall I do think being able to store up samples and combat the finite number of samples in the submersible and teams limited extension is going to all around be extremely helpful.
Got it. Let's hear about your dark horse, Miriam.
Sure. So my dark horse is team 1998 Eastern Foxes from Romania. So I know we've talked a lot about Romania tonight. I do think Eastern Foxes specifically is a team to watch out for. So they were on the Franklin Winning Alliance, and they were the only Romanian alliance to make Da Vinci this year, and they will be worth paying attention to. So the reason I'm putting them as a dark horse is they're going to get overlooked with so many other amazing teams present, and then especially because they are only predicted to win 5 out of their 9 matches. So the match that I want to highlight with them is going to be qualification match 26. So they are on the Blue Alliance with team 16 to 255 Minerva Warriors, and they are against teams 23 521 DeSoto Technics and team 6417 Blue Crew. So, something that I find very interesting about this match is that both alliances, they have one very strong team, and then the other team slightly weaker, but still very good. This is all relative, and the predictions have the Red Alliance winning. I think Eastern Foxes has a real fighting chance, and they will need to flip a few predictions towards them if they want to be one of the 8 alliance captains.
Yeah, so Miriam, it looks like to me that that Eastern Foxes is projected to lose by about 15 points. Where do you think, like, how do you think you make those points up? Is it going to be just like cycles? Is it going to be a hang? What's going to be the deciding factor
I think
in a match like
ultimately
this?
the factor is consistency. That's just, I mean, like everyone is like 15 points. That's what is that like? Two specimens, two samples, sample and a specimen, or it's even just a hang. Like that's just like, like if a team like making a hang when they haven't previously, that can make a difference, or just you know not missing two samples. So it's, I think really anything could happen. 15 points is basically nothing. um,
Got it.
It's also important to note that our predictions are currently, I believe, based off of OPR, and so it really is just going to be their consistency. All it takes is one mistake to mess up your scoring. So I think that the consistency is going to be the key too.
For sure. All right. On to my dark horse. So my dark horse is team 28596 Hypernova from Fremont, California. They made it to elims at the NorCal Championship, but unfortunately did not qualify for Worlds. However, they have been keeping themselves quite busy. They competed at Michiana at the Michiana Premier event just a few days ago. They're going to be at MTI this weekend, and then they're currently registered for the Canadian Rockies Premier event in late July. So lots of off-season competitions for Hypernova. So in Michiana, the match I have on screen here, Hypernova ended as the finalist alliance first pick, averaging almost 50 points more than their NorCal performance. The three biggest things that I think make them a dark horse for me are their CV-based intaking, hyper-optimized cycles, and strategic driving. So you can see that every time they approach the submersible, there's like a flash of light, and then they go very quickly pick up the sample and then move on to the next one. I think this is already really good, but I think the additional samples inside that submersible are just going to make it even better and give Hypernova an even bigger advantage for MTI. Now, talking about those cycles, they have just so many degrees of freedom on their intake and outtake both, and they use them really, really well. And so I think just shaving down those milliseconds every single cycle is really what makes them a dark horse for me. Finally, the last thing that I think is super important is at Michiana, they were playing defense against ICE and Rotu D2. Those are not teams that you just willy nilly play defense against, right? It really requires a lot of strategic driving and planning and really good execution. And I think Hypernova did it super, super well, and they're going to keep doing it at MTI. So tonight, I'm going to talk about qualification 82. This has Hypernova paired with Technova against Juice and Blue Crew. We can see that this is an extremely close match, 373 points for the Red Alliance and 374 points for the Blue Alliance. And what really made this match stick out to me is if the Blue Alliance does win as predicted, this makes Blue Crew another 8-1 team, which is just like, one of the highest rankings, or that is the highest best record we have currently predicted for MTI. And so, fortunately, I think there are a lot of things that are in the benefit of the Nova Alliance, as I've been saying. And so, over on the screen here, we can see Technova playing in the lower right corner. They're very versatile. And so I honestly see the decision between sample and specimen scoring coming down to just how the teams are doing at MTI on that day. We've seen very optimized cycles from both of them, but I do think that Technova's pass through specimen dumping into the human player zone is going to be very handy in the initial cycles, and then something crazy could happen with like Hypernova switching over to do the scoring actually once they've collected all those specimens. Now, taking a look at the blue lines, Juice is in a similar situation as Hypernova, not having competed since NorCal champs, but I see them focusing on specimen cycles given their auto performance with those 5 specimens we see on the screen, and then some automations that I think will be very useful to speed up their cycles. Now, talking about Blue Crew, I think based on their world's performance, we can see that they clearly prefer sample cycling, and I think they'll just be more practiced at it, just a well-oiled machine, and that's what you want in these MTI qualification matches. To me, the biggest difference maker is the end game. Hypernova and Technova both have a very consistent level 3 hang, while Juice and Blue Crew will most likely be level 2 hangs. So I think that's like a huge difference maker for this match, and I'm not sure if it's captured really well in the OPR. Rowan, what do you think?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think you said the two teams on, was it the Blue Alliance or the Red Alliance, only have two, or only have
On
level
the
2 hangs
on the Blue Alliance, Blue Crew and
on the Blue
Juice.
Alliance. I think that as I said a bit ago, I think it really comes down to whether or not those couple seconds spent not hanging for level 3 hang are worth it based on how many cycles you can get in. Again, I think Miriam said 15 points is, 2 samples in the high basket. So if it would take one of those teams like 5 seconds to do a level 3 hang, but 2.5 seconds to do one single or one cycle into the high basket, so there's no real difference in the amount of points scored. But
Mhm.
as you know, we are in MTI, of course, these submersibles are going to be completely empty by the end of the match. So we'll just have to see how fast they get cleared and how fast these teams can hang.
Yeah, not only submersibles cleared, but also baskets full, right? Like we saw baskets being full for a long time, right? You have teams like Robo Troopers, Alphatronic, and many more who are starting to put samples in the low basket. So, they're not going to be getting those 8 extra points from every high basket sample just because you can't. Now, Miriam, before we wrap up the show, one question I have for you is regarding alliances. So MTI, like the rest of the Into the Deep season, has 2 team alliances, or like primarily 2 team alliances. We don't have a third team anymore that has to play. Do you see the Romanian like Alphatronic Technozy alliance coming back together, or do you see someone like Upper Creek, being a better pick for one of them?
So I feel like it partially like I see. I think it depends on how they think of it. So
Mhm.
I don't know. So I feel like Upper Creek is obviously, if they are in the picking position, they will want to pick a Romanian. But also, the example you gave, Upper Creek, Alphatronic, they not or sorry, Technozy Alphatronic. They were together at Worlds. They probably practiced together in Romania, and so. But I do think Upper Creek has more individual scoring potential than either of them. Um, so I think it kind of depends on like what they value. In this game, I could see Upper Creek being the team that gets picked just because there isn't too much partner interaction. But also like there is like consistency is key. Like, any team here could miss a sample and that could bring them down in the rankings or up in the rank, or like, someone could score a penalty that'll bring a team up in the rankings. So I don't even think I can start with predicting who the captains are going to be.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah, I think regardless of how it goes, MTI is just always so exciting every single year, and I think Into the Deep is going to be no exception. So with that, I think it's going to wrap it up for our MTI preview and predictions show. Don't forget that you can watch MTI live this weekend on Fun Robotics Network's YouTube channel and check out the MTI hype video releasing soon, as well as the match schedule, which is posted in the chat and is also posted or will be posted on the MTI website. So, on behalf of myself, Miriam, Rowan, and our producer Matthew working behind the scenes, I would like to thank you all for tuning in. Good luck to all teams attending MTI. Make sure you tune in for all the action on Fun Robotics Network and definitely stop by and say hi if you see any of us around. Thank you all. Good night.